Okay, welcome back. I'm sorry for those of you that wanted a live stream this weekend. If you did, maybe you didn't. Maybe you're glad there's not as much of me around. Um, but I did want to talk about something I've been writing. See if I don't stream for a while, or I don't do, or I do more recorded videos. It's either because I'm working on recorded videos or doing more writing. There's certain things I'd rather put out in written form just because the organization is better. And this concerns sports networks right now, sports media, especially ESPN, as you can see from the screen next to me. There's a radio guy I listen to pretty frequently, Clay Travis. You might know of him, the guy who said boobs on CNN, and what's her name? Was it Allison Camerata? Or well, one of their anchors like flipped out, and she pitched a fit and was like, "Oh, how dare you say this on camera? We have all these refined minds here at CNN." Of course, she's not British, but that's the best snobby accent I could give. Well, Clay Travis has been writing a lot and talking a lot about how ESPN is going bankrupt. And he is coming out with a book in September, which I do have on pre-order. But really, you connect the dots without him, and people know that ESPN is just going into the shitter. I'd much rather watch TNT and see their broadcast of a game, even if it is the shitty NBA. Which, by the way, I watched the game today. Fucking retarded. And I was like trolling people on my Facebook after the game, oh, the NBA is rigged. I do this contest every year with myself and a friend of mine where I see how many games does it take in the playoffs before I finally throw my hands up and say the fucking thing is rigged and I don't care anymore. And that was today where the Rockets just blew it. It's like, I don't care about the fourth installment of the same stupid matchup between Stephen Curry and LeBron James and Kevin Durant and whatever. Anyway, so I call this the worldwide leader in woke. I think I used it actually for a stream last week. And it includes a lot of the history of ESPN in the first part. And, what really brought ESPN to the pinnacle of cable media? It wasn't the ESPN of today. It was the ESPN of the 70s and 80s. First of all, if you think about it, ESPN launched in 1979. That was 1 year before CNN. So they were actually one of the first networks to really start in on this idea of a longer daily news cycle. It wouldn't be 1/2 hour at this hour and then another half hour later. And then in between you have, hee-haw where people are running around with fucking straw hats and, people screwing each other in donkey outfits. The CNN and ESPN, I guess, were kind of pioneers in that genre. But ESPN to an extent more so because they were really saying sports and athletics are important enough culturally that they deserve their own channel where people really focus on it. And obviously, I mean, if you think about it retrospectively, why not? They've always had their own magazines. They've always had, their own, I mean, not always, but you know what I'm saying? There's a long history of people who have sold various media that are completely sports related, whether it's one sport in particular or a variety of sports. So it's a great idea. And then, they actually, I think their first, it says in fact that their first major contract with a sports competition was the NCAA men's basketball tournament, which I still think is the premier, in my opinion, that's the real competitive tournament that there is left in sports. Some of the other ones are like, whatever. I mean, Major League Baseball has actually gotten better. The NHL, obviously, this year has gotten better. But some of them for years, the NBA is, like I said, it's the biggest joke that there is. Tomorrow, by the way, I'm probably sometime in the afternoon, I'm probably going to compose like a list of plot lines that are more compelling than the NBA Finals. Okay, you're welcome to submit your own, but the ones I'm going to put out are uh, they're going to be much more juicy, if I can put it that way. What else led ESPN to rise to power? So this was kind of like a two-part series. First of all, it was founded by Bill and Scott Rasmussen in 1979. Then they were sold to mostly to Getty Oil, which is a massive company. Then 84, ABC Network bought them out. Then 95, they were both bought out by Disney, and have gone to the shitter since then. But as long as their own management was fairly independent, they did have a lot of innovative ideas. ESPN Radio in 1992. It's still a successful business. I mean, it is. It's not as successful as it used to be, according to some people. But it's still pretty successful. Sunday Night Football. Okay, back in the 80s, there was Sunday afternoon football, right? And then there was a Monday game, and that was it. Sunday Night Football became really the marquee game of the week. Monday Night Football for years was a great program. then in, I think it was 2006, I believe they said it. ESPN made the biggest fuck up of their lifetimes, I think. In my opinion, they let Sunday Night Football go to NBC, where it still dominates, and they took over Monday Night Football. And since then, it's just become an awful, awful night. And there's hardly any good Monday night games anymore. It's almost as bad as Thursday Night Football, which itself is a joke. What else did they do? The X Games and Winter X Games, that major cultural shift. To think before 1995, skateboarding it had its own culture and subculture and music scene around it, and skate punks and whatever. This is something, X Games really propelled it to being something that there were video games that were about it. There were people who actually made careers out of being X Gamers. That was a big innovation of ESPN. And, of course, they had a lot of icons at ESPN, especially from the Sports Center program, which is, it still is the big news program on ESPN. Dan Patrick and Keith Olbermann, who were big icons, and then later Rich Eisen and Stuart Scott. Stuart Scott passed away. I was never a huge fan of his, but he was a good person. You could tell when he passed away. I think he was an inspiration to a lot of people. And then there were a lot of, big stars that got their start there. Jeremy Schaap, who's still with them. Adam Schefter, I think he now works for the NFL Network. He might be at ESPN still. Aaron Andrews, a star in more ways than one. I know I didn't see the video if you're asking, but everybody knows that she got her start at ESPN, and you could say that she got a boost from some sort of creeper who gave her more attention than she ever thought she would get. Kenny Mayne, NBA reporter David Aldridge, who I think is pretty good, and Peter Gammons from Major League Baseball. Then they get bought out by Disney, and that was a great era because the sports were great. Michael Jordan was at the height of his career. The second three-peat. There's a great era for basketball with Michael Jordan. People talk about LeBron being, one of the greatest of all time. Yes, he is. He is. Some people say he is the greatest of all time. I can tell you that back then, when you would watch on a Sunday afternoon Michael Jordan playing, more people were focused on that game than on any average regular season game nowadays. Nowadays, regular season games don't even mean shit. And that's not LeBron's fault. I'm just saying that in that era, if you had Michael Jordan on in the afternoon, it didn't matter if it was the, fucking December, where the games are basically meaningless to the playoff picture. You had the entire country was watching Michael Jordan, playing. Whether he could be playing like a loser team, like let's say the at the time the Celtics were garbage. Just picking them out of the hat. In the late 90s, the Celtics were trash. If Michael Jordan was playing them on national TV, people were watching. If he was playing the New York Knicks, I can guarantee you the entire country was watching that game because it was him, Charles Oakley or whatever. So it was a great era because of him, Michael Jordan. And there were some other comparable superstars, not of the same magnitude as Jordan, but in the same sense in their sport, they were a superstar. I would say Venus Williams and Serena Williams at the time, Tiger Woods, Tony Hawk, of course. I'm not a big X Games guy, but everybody remembers Tony Hawk. Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa, that one season, they're basically, they were boosting the syringe industry's stock numbers all by themselves. I think Ken Griffey also had a great season that year. So, yeah, you had a great era when Disney bought ESPN, but not because of Disney, because it was a great era for those sports. Now, of course, after that, there was a steroid scandal. In tennis, Serena Williams, there's only so many years it can keep going when, people, I don't think tennis is as compelling as it was before. Back then, men's tennis too, they had Pete Sampras. He was a big superstar in the U.S. Nowadays, American tennis, that you can't blame it on anybody. I mean, what do you want? Roger Federer and Rafael Nadal are the best tennis players there are. Even somebody as not tennis aficionado as me knows that. So then CNN was like jelly, and they decided to launch with Sports Illustrated a new network called CNNSI, which was a huge flop. But Fox Sports also was launched, and they remain the biggest rival today, and they're going to overtake them eventually. Eventually people are just going to get tired of watching ESPN entirely, and they already are switching in increasing numbers to Fox Sports 1 for a lot of these programs. They just made these questionable personnel decisions in the 2000s. All sorts of people. I think the funniest one I saw was that they put Tony Kornheiser in the Monday Night Football booth. He's never done play-by-play. It was like a real fish out of water. Dave O'Brien, who was a baseball announcer, they made him call the FIFA World Cup in Germany in 2006. That doesn't make any sense. Come on. So, but there was enough wealth to go around, and there were some great players at the time. Jordan retired, but then there was Kobe Bryant and Tim Duncan and the Spurs. There was the Patriots with Tom Brady and Bill Belichick. Those were some iconic years, even if the entire country wasn't glued to the TV set. It was there was what to write about, and there was interest in it. The Red Sox came back in Major League Baseball. So in a sense, CNN was sustained not by virtue of its own management, but by virtue of the fact that some of these sports were healthy. The NHL had 2 strikes that decade, so hockey was a non-starter. But in the U.S., if hockey doesn't perform, it's not the worst thing in the world. No offense to hockey fans. I like hockey. I'm not a huge hockey fan, but I respect the sport. I've got to get back into it, to be honest with you. Then in 2011, the politics starts to creep in. Hank Williams Jr. had this whole clip where this is him on Joy Behar.
ESPN, they have cut the ties with you. Do you think that you should have been fired?
Well, I quit.
Oh, you quit.
I quit. When they pulled that Monday night, I called my manager. I said, "You can tell, ESPN adios."
Really?
Oh, really?
Well, this is their statement. We have decided to part ways with Hank Williams Jr. I don't think they realize you quit.
Yeah, you think they did today after what I said on The View? It's like the Spanish-American War. We are history.
Yeah, you took a shot at Mickey Mouse today, too.
Yeah, Mickey's a mean mouse. Yeah.
What was that about, the Mickey Mouse
Because I had Mickey Mantle. jersey.
Well, you weren't talking about Mickey Mantle. You were talking about Mickey Mouse.
Yeah, but the other Mantle's a good one. Yeah, he's a mean mouse. He, I let him know pretty well unequivocally, me, my song, ABC, Disney, ESPN have parted company, and as of May of 2012, me and that song, I'm a free agent, and I have choices, and That's what America's about. Choices and options.
Yeah. Well,
that he wanted to go public with the fact that he was gay, I think a lot of fans started to say, okay, I feel like I'm watching the NFL to see whether or not my team's going to win, not to make a societal statement. And look, I don't think people who disagree with gay marriage are awful human beings. There are a lot of people in my state who don't believe that people should be able to get married if they're gay. I disagree with them, but I don't think they're horrible, racist, bigot, awful human beings. I grew up in a Southern Baptist church. The vast majority of people who went to my Southern Baptist church probably would have that belief, right?
Yeah.
And I don't think they're awful human beings. I know them pretty well.
You know what you can do is talk to them.
Yeah, right. And try to persuade them that they're wrong in the marketplace of ideas.
I
right?
know.
Instead of
science.
immediately attacking them, right?
Yeah.
And so, but to me, that eye-opening moment for me was Mizzou. And the University of Missouri, for people who don't know it, this was like kind of everything that I care about coming together. SEC football. I remember being on the airplane flying back from LA where I was working with Fox Sports, and my Twitter feed blows up. And there's all these people out there talking about the fact that Missouri's football team has said they are not going to play unless the demands of this guy who are hunger striking and the other Black Lives Matter activists are agreed to. And everybody on Twitter is amazing. Just about everybody is saying, so brave of the Missouri football team, so brave of Gary Pinkel to support them. This is a massive moment in the world of sports. We're seeing the power of athletes raising their voice. And my first thought was, okay, all that's fine. What's being protested? Like I understand. Like I've been on a college campus.
damn it. Uh, fuck. I have to repeat the whole thing. And I just wasted like 2 minutes. So basically, his key statement here, don't worry, is, okay, I feel like I'm watching the NFL to see whether or not my team wins, not to make a societal statement. So I thought that that was like a big, that basically, it's not a deep statement, but it's basically the only statement you need. Most players, they play football in order to make money, and that's it. Make money, have status in society, get big, become a star, whatever. Most fans, they watch the game because they might like a team, or they could be fantasy baseball players, or they're gambling or whatever. Selfish needs, nothing to do with changing the world or saving the whales. And Michael Sam came out as this gay guy at the University of Missouri, which I think not long after that they had that whole Mizzou racism controversy. And people, first of all, the story was way, 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 way overexposed. Nobody cared. He was not predicted to go high in the draft. I think he was drafted in the end, and he was then released by the Rams, and then he was picked up by Dallas and released by Dallas. And people know nowadays that Michael Sam. I don't know the guy. I don't think that this is really the biggest story in the world, but that story was inflated by the media, by ESPN, including the LA Times even criticized them for highlighting his showering habits. Then there was the whole Bruce Jenner bullshit, Caitlyn, whatever the hell you want to call her, and people were like, well, in my opinion, it was like, this is the way I felt. If I wanted to see idiots complain about lifestyle things that have nothing to do with sports, I would watch the E Network. Isn't that the network that they're on? It's either them or Bravo, the Kardashians and the Jenners or whatever. Nobody cared about that. But what they did, the idiots at ESPN, this is what their thinking was. This is how they think. They're like, people love the Kardashians. They get all these retweets and shares or whatever, and they're always making these magazine covers. What if we made it possible to segue, more Kardashian shit into ESPN and sports coverage? Well, those are two different. That's like telling people. There's some people who like, there's some people who like Italian food, and there's some people who eat Chinese food. So it's like telling somebody, let's put soy sauce in your ravioli. That was basically their approach. It was one of the dumbest decisions ever. But by the way, their decision to award Kris Jenner or whatever, Bruce Jenner, whoever the fuck he is, Caitlyn Jenner, with the Arthur Ashe Courage Award for that year was quite honestly one of the dumbest and shameful incidents of that year, when there was Lauryn Hill, who died of cancer playing college basketball, and they just didn't screw that, screw the woman who played basketball, played into some sort of late season tournament with a terminal illness. We're going to award this to somebody who hasn't played at all since 1978 or whatever it was. Bruce Jenner was an athlete, in Montreal in the '76 Olympics. And ESPN wasn't the only one. I think Sports Illustrated gave Jenner a cover that year that was like, who cares? Then there was the Donald Sterling incident. He got kicked out of the NBA. His team was seized, and there was like some good discussion about that, but it was more that racial crap. Now, of course, the Kaepernick stuff, of which there's going to be more discussion. Maybe even live stream tomorrow with a couple people. Still not clear if it's going to happen and when. Then, of course, Curt Schilling was fired. And that's the end of part one. Curt Schilling's firing, though legally justified, it opened the eyes of a lot of people. I think the reaction many of us had was that ESPN is not really a network that really cares so much about sports anymore. They care more about, framing sports in a societal angle that is suitable for, the new yuppie generation, the type that, the type that watched Will and Grace, or the type that they see, the Tumblr generation, for example. That was the intention. They were like, well, we don't need Kurt Schilling anymore. He's just this bigoted piece of crap. We're gonna replace him with, I don't know, somebody who will conform. And they did. They fired him because he tweeted out. First, he tweeted out, for which they suspended him, I believe, some anti-Muslim meme where he just claimed that there's a high percentage of Muslims that are considered radical, and he compared that to the Nazis or whatever. So I'm not sure. I'm not going to say whether I think what he said was correct. Okay, because that's not the issue here. The issue is that he was suspended for it. Okay. Now, leading up to, I think I'm going to do it tomorrow. Somebody else said some things that were much more politically charged, and they did not get any flack for it. Then he put out an anti-transgender meme. So, he gets fired, and I think a lot of people. I remember. I think I was at the gym that I was at the previous company I worked at. We had a great in facility gym, and I was working out there, and I was like, if they can fire Kurt Schilling, who is a 3-time World Series winner, and is very popular with baseball fans, and probably fans of other sports, especially in New England, then really ESPN is more intent on preserving an image that is consistent politically than it is on presenting an image that is focused on its original mission, which is reporting on sports. Originally in 1979. ESPN was not formed as a network. By the way, again, formed before CNN, their focus was on sports. It was not on, there were plenty of other topics going on at the time. So, at the time when there was a hostage crisis that was, brewing, at a time when, there was the upcoming Moscow Olympic boycott, that event. I mean, this was not long after CNN was launched. Or ESPN was launched, at a time when you had the stagnating economy under Carter. People found it important enough to tune into an all sports network. So it's not as if ESPN has never existed before in an environment where there's controversy and politics or whatever. The difference is that now you can't filter the politics out of anything. It's almost impossible. Yesterday I had a fantastic evening talking to people. I was watching the Cavs game at a friend's house, and we didn't discuss politics one time. It was a great evening, but it almost never happens anymore. And I think one of the reasons it doesn't happen anymore is because of the changes that ESPN has undergone. So we'll talk about that sometime tomorrow. So please like the video, share the video, subscribe to the channel, comment below, and let me know what you think.